What is up, my fellow movie nerds? My name's Barry King and I am that weird movie nerd. Street Part 2, 1978. Now, I was pumped for this movie. I loved this first movie. It had a lot wrong with it, so they had a lot to fix if they wanted to live up to the expectations of not only myself, but a lot of other fans that were conflicted about this movie and this series and didn't know where it would go and what would happen and if it would be as good as the first one, but better. Now, I was pumped for the summer camp vibes that this was going to give off. I love summer camp movies. I love summer camp horror thriller movies. And did this deliver? It definitely had that summer camp vibe to it and it got a lot right, but it didn't really feel like it was summer camp. It kind of pushed that aside, just like the first movie pushed a lot of things aside to make room for like the trilogy and like the love story that they had. And this sort of did the same. It kind of pushed it aside so it could focus more on the witch and connecting it to the first movie and the next movie, and it just, like the first movie, wasn't all there for me. And I love how as soon as we jumped into this 70s era, it gave us that huge 70s punch. Did anyone else feel that? Yeah, huge 70s punch. I sure did, and I loved it, but it did wear off after a while, which I didn't like, but it was still the 70s. I felt it was in the back of my mind that it was the 70s, and that carried me along the whole movie, so I guess it was okay, but, you know, it could have been more 70s. Don't get me wrong, it definitely got that nostalgia better than the first one. The 1978 nostalgia, they definitely had that going for them. The soundtrack was amazing. I'm not sure if it's because I knew most of the songs from the soundtrack, but the soundtrack felt a lot more like it was from that era, and the characters, especially Cindy and Ziggy, felt like they were a lot more from that era. The whole cast actually did a good job at giving off that 70s vibe, and that's awesome, because that's what we wanted. We wanted this nostalgia, this summer camp, and they gave it to us. Not to the highest standard that I wanted, but they still gave it to us. This movie had beautiful lighting, really beautiful lighting. There were certain wide shots of scenes where there were windows and there was light spilling through, and they used fog and mist and all that to amplify that, and it looked gorgeous. And they used a lot more natural light, like lights in the cabins or lamps in the cabins and moonlight and all that, and I love natural light, so that was a big tick off of my checklist. It was dope in this movie to actually see where the killers came from. Like, they weren't just ghosts that appeared out of nowhere. They were actually made of flesh from the witch's heart, or whatever the hell that heart beating flesh thing was in the caves. I thought they would explain that, but I guess that's probably going to be explained in 1666, so we'll get around to that. But it was cool to see where they originated from, that they weren't ghosts. The relationship between Cindy and Ziggy was great. The contrast was really great, how Cindy was this like virgin child and then Ziggy was this rebellious child who would be the one to most likely get in trouble and all that. And it was cool to see them connect at the end and reunite at the end and hug it out and be badasses together. But I didn't really like Cindy. She was kind of like, not like Dina in a way that she was a bitch, but she was just annoying. Like, her little side story with Alice, the junkie, was not my favourite part, but I guess it had to be in there to explain the witch and to explain this trilogy further and the backstory and all that, so I guess that's okay, but it wasn't my favourite part of the movie. If they cut it and added a lot more about the camp, the summer camp and all that, I feel like it would have been greater. Again, focusing on the movie, not the trilogy, and only dropping like little breadcrumbs of the next movie and connecting it and all that, like I said in the first review. But I guess for the trilogy's sake, they had to put it in there, so okay. And as I just said, Cindy was annoying, and I felt like Ziggy was kind of the better main character. I really liked her. She's my favourite main character out of the trilogy so far, and I mean, she was in Stranger Things, so of course she's gonna be a good character for this because she trained for this stuff. She knows how this goes down, and I just loved her in this. She was a great main character. I just want to touch on a few things that I found really cool in this, and one of these is when the Shady Siders are in the cabin and Tommy comes in and they've got the matches, and then they drop the matches, and then you can just slowly see the match burning on the ground, and you can hear these sound effects in the background of them getting slaughtered. That was so cool. Those sound effects were so cool. That moment, though, they could have done so much more with that. They could have made that so creepy, so tense, but they didn't. They wasted it. The sound effects were cool and all that, but they could have done so much more with that. Another moment was when Ziggy was being chased by Tommy in like the main cabin, I forget what it's called, the hall or something like that, and Carry On Wayward Son was playing in the background. That was so cool. That was what I wanted this movie and the first movie to do, was more moments like that, and I felt like if I did a lot more moments like that, it would have been a much funner time and a much better movie. The scene where Tommy gets his mask, which is actually like the bag over his head, is freaking dope. The music in that moment was amazing. The lighting in that moment was amazing. Just everything in that moment was so freaking sick, and I can tell why they use that on the promotional thing and as a scene in the first movie to refer back to this movie. It's just such a dope moment and I loved it. Now let's talk about the things that I didn't like in this. The soundtrack was amazing, but I feel like they used a lot of the songs to bridge across to a different scene, to transition to a different scene. I felt they did that like 6 or 7 times, and it got really old and really stale after a while. Don't get me wrong, the songs were amazing, but it's just the way they used them to transition between scene got really old really fast. And some of the composed scores for this, not the soundtrack, but the composed scores, felt really Tom and Jerry Looney Tunes-esque, if you get what I mean. I mean, that kind of makes sense because those are cartoons from that era, but it didn't feel like it should have been in a thriller horror movie. There were definitely some moments, like I said before, when Tommy had the bag over his head, that the soundtrack worked, the scores worked, but just other moments it felt silly, and it felt like it needed a touch of 2021 music, but I guess I'll forgive it because it's the music of that era, so it kind of makes sense. But then again, I'm just a sucker for really, really good scores, and when they don't live up to my expectations, then I sort of go crazy. I'm really sad that these movies don't have a style. Halloween has its tension, Scream has its self-awareness, The Babysitter has its energy, The Conjuring has its pure fear, Insidious has its over-the-top concepts, but like this doesn't really have anything we can refer back to. I was expecting this to be full on bright with neons, like Stranger Things or something, or just dive so deep into that 70s theme that it's like that 70s movie that everybody loves and everybody can refer back to, but it's got nothing going for it. It's just a generic horror movie. It's part of a trilogy which is being released over 3 weeks, so I guess that's what it's kind of got going for it, but the movies themselves don't really have anything special about them that I'm going to refer back to in 10 years and be like, remember how that movie felt? I want my movie to feel like that. I'm probably never gonna do that for these movies, which I hate. It was really cool in this movie how we got to see Nick's backstory though, and how he was incorporated into this and all that, and how he had police captain shoes to fill. That was really cool. And it was really cool how we saw Ruby Lane's backstory and how her mother's connected to it as well. And Ruby Lane's mother's motivation was really cool. I really dug her motivation and why she did what she did. She wasn't crazy or anything. She was trying to reverse this curse, which is what led these heroes, these protagonists on this journey. That was a really good story element I liked in this. Speaking of story elements, I also want to dig into some of this story that we've been given. Why did Ziggy have such a deep hatred for this town? And she had such a good, deep, well-constructed explanation for it as well. But like, that kind of shit happens all the time. Probably not so much in the 70s with her parents, but blaming it on the town kind of feels weird, because I feel like if this town is known for its killers, that it's gonna be like a running joke throughout the town. I didn't think that they would have somebody who took it so seriously and was like, this town is cursed. Like, that would usually be a joke for the town, like, oh, this town's cursed. That's why this happened to me. That's why I dropped my croissant. But then like at the end there, Cindy takes it so seriously as well, and it's just weird. It's really weird how these kids have taken this curse idea and is blaming it for their parents breaking up. But again, it's pretty cool how this is the motivation that Cindy and Ziggy are given, so that they feel like they need to put an end to this shady side curse, not because they want to be the heroes and all that, just because they want to break this curse because it's putting such a dampener on their lives. And that's great, that's really good, but it's just kind of out of nowhere that kids would be blaming a town and it's cursed. They don't know this curse is actually real, but they're putting a lot of blame on it. So it just seems kind of far-fetched, if you get me. And it was cool to see how Alice had that motivation as well, but it was a bit weird when she went all puppy-eyed and all sentimental just out of nowhere, being like, oh, my mother and father and all this stuff. This is why I want to help. It was very strange how it just that pacing halted just for her to tell her little story. But again, it's cool that she had that motivation behind her as well, that shady side had held her back or had held her family back, or shady side was the reason that shit was happening to her. And I like how they're giving shady side life, how they're making it like the Gotham of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. It's cool that they're giving this town life and they're making it an enemy that these kids can't really get away from, a killer that they can't outrun. While Cindy and Alice are trapped in a cave, they seem to be pulling shit out of this book that they have, like they're archaeologists that have studied it for their whole lives and they know every page, and then just like out of nowhere they discover that like the witch's totem, the symbol is actually like a map of the cave. Like, that seems so pulled out of nowhere, and they just keep on pulling these ideas out of the book. Like at the end when Alice figures out that the mess hall is actually another exit because of something she read in the book, it just seemed very far-fetched that they were pulling shit out of this book that they had only just picked up and hadn't really read and researched. That might be another reason why I don't like that scene, because it's just they're pulling shit out of a hat, and it seemed like it was all just, again, like the first movie, the plot was placed out in front of them and they didn't really have to struggle to get it. Let's also quickly talk about Nick and Ziggy. Their relationship is adorable, and this is how the first movie should have done it. They shouldn't have made the whole movie about these two characters. They should have done it like this, how there was just a little relationship going there, and that was a driving motivation to why Nick wanted Ziggy safe and all that, and how at the end he comes to save her, he comes to find her. But it's just breadcrumbs, it's not the whole story. Same with Tommy and Cindy. Their love wasn't pushed so hard. We knew they were together because of the little breadcrumbs that were being dropped all over the place. It wasn't the whole plot, it was there and it was a driving factor, but it wasn't the whole fucking movie. I've also got like a few little minor nitpicks that I want to get out. Why does Cindy think that the killers want to kill Ziggy? Like, we know that, but how does Cindy know that? Did I miss something? How does she know that? And there's also no way that that hand is still under that tree if it's been put in a mold. They would have changed the soil for that tree or something, or just something could have happened where that hand was dug out of the ground. Like, there's no way that has stayed there for that long. And why did Dina go cross-eyed at the end when she touched the skeleton, the witch's skeleton? Did you see that? Why? That was so weird. Also, where are the adults at this camp? I know that they had counselors, but they all seem like kids, like under 21. Isn't there like one or two adults at this camp, like that are overseers? Like, where are they? It seemed like adults didn't exist in this world until somebody died and they called them. Alright, let's talk about the kills in this and the special effects. Damn, they were cool. Like, it was nothing we're not used to, and like the first movie gave us 2 better kills, but this movie, the kills, the special effects are great. That first kill that Tommy did was so cool. He gave off that crazy, bloodthirsty person right off the bat, and I loved it. And I love how they kill Cindy and Ziggy at the end. It was so bloodthirsty, it was so cool, and I loved how they killed the main 2 characters. And it would have been really cool if they actually killed Ziggy, but they didn't. That's okay, but it would have been cool if they killed the main 2 characters. But the scares in this are still fucking pathetic, man. There's no build-up, there's no eerie sounds, the soundtrack doesn't do much for the scene, so there's no tension, and there's no bathing in the darkness or bathing in a moment or just staying on one shot. They just broke it with like cheap jump scare sound effects and showing that the killer's there and like, ooh, like there's nothing creative about the scares in this movie. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be scares or if they're just supposed to be, ooh, killer, you're dead. But if they were meant to be scary or you're meant to be jumped, they're not working. Like, how can you be this bad at horror, my dude? Alrighty, let's quickly talk about this twist at the end. I gotta be honest, I'm not saying this because, oh, I'm cool, I saw it coming, but I kind of saw it coming. Because I thought about it, Ziggy, like, who would name their kid Ziggy? Like, maybe, but no. But good on you, Netflix. That was cool. Thanks for doing that. That just adds a little bit more flair to this movie, and it's greatly appreciated by my little filmmaking heart. But like, dude, can we talk about how Ziggy survived? Like, see, does that work? Like, I'm no expert, I'm no medical expert, I'm no doctor, but does CPR really bring back somebody who's been stabbed multiple times? Like, wouldn't it just push more blood out? I really didn't see how that worked. Maybe 7 or 8 adrenaline sticks might have worked in that situation, but it was a bit far-fetched. But I guess she had to die and all that, so I guess it's okay, but like, it's still far-fetched. Like, you could have just given her pills or something to OD. The next movie, to be honest, I'm not that pumped for it. I'm staying optimistic about it though. I haven't seen many witch movies that take place in the 1600s, to be honest. Like, I've seen The Witch, that's a really good movie, but I don't know if they're going that direction. But they have a big chance to do something different here. Because again, I haven't seen movies in the 1600s about witches and all that, so they've got a chance not to mess it up as bad, you know? I'm rating this movie 3.5 out of 5 because I felt like it did better than the first one. I enjoyed it more than the first one. The pacing was better, the story was a bit better, it was a bit dragged out, and there weren't as many memorable characters in this as the first movie. It was just Cindy and Ziggy that I liked, and even Cindy was a bit of an iffy character, and all the other characters, they were kind of throwaway people, throwaway plot pieces, which you would expect, but even the first movie did good at having throwaway people that you actually felt something for. Also, why are they casting the same people in the roles for 1666? Is there a reason for that? Please be a reason for that, because that, I don't like that. I mean, having Dina as the witch is okay, but like having all the other characters as characters in that era, that's probably gonna take me out. But I'm staying optimistic for it. So those were my thoughts on Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Did you guys enjoy this? Comment down below, tell me what I talked about in this video, if it was wrong, if it was right, if there was more to say about this movie. Just talk about it in there, because I like this movie. I really, really like this movie. It didn't give me the summer camp feeling that I wanted, but it's still a good movie, okay? So 3.5 out of 5. If you have any movies you want me to watch and review, then comment it down below and I'll get to it when I get to it, which might be in the distant future because I've got a lot of movies to get through. But thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next review.